Hi, I'm Galvin.
And I'm Author Function.
And this is the Secret Boss podcast, where we talk about the best auteurs in gaming, whether they deserve that title or not. And today we're talking about Terry Cavanagh, a guy I picked last week because I didn't have much to say about him, or at least I thought. And now I just want to say, Terry, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I respect you like 50 times more. I already liked your games, but I respect you like 10,000 times more now.
Wonderful zinger. Just praise the man right up top.
We have to be very careful.
You want to avoid Terry's wrath.
Every single person is listening to our podcast. We're super famous. But yeah, anyways, Terry Cavanagh, very interesting figure. I feel like he was pretty popular in the 2010 scene, although Offer, I think you said you don't really know him that much, right?
Yeah, I wasn't super familiar with Terry Cavanagh. I'm familiar enough with the early 2010s indie scene to know about a lot of the big names, but I haven't seen a lot of discussion about Terry Cavanagh. Like, I know VVVV, or how many V's there are, was a really big deal, and that was one of the few indie games I had heard about at that time. But I didn't really see the same discussion about him like I would with Jonathan Blow or Edmund McMillan.
Basically all the guys in Indie Game the Movie.
Yeah, Indie Game the Movie. Yeah, that's the whole thing. I mean, actually, unironically, I think that Indie Game the Movie was really where people heard about indie developers, and that kind of culture disseminated. And it's like, oh, okay, these are the big three that we need to care about. And like maybe there were some other ones like Zun, Z-U-N. I've never pronounced his name out loud. But yeah, Terry Cavanagh wasn't someone I was really familiar with. Like, I only knew about that one game and hadn't really heard anything about him specifically as a person. So I'm really interested to get into here.
Yeah. I guess for me, for some reason, I prize Terry Cavanagh, maybe not just as high as Edmund McMillan and all those other people, but he was pretty high up there for me. And I mean, there definitely isn't much talk about him now, although I feel like there isn't much talk about McMillan either. But
there's not a lot of talk about any indie developer because it's the sort of indie apocalypse or whatever.
Why?
But
did something happen?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
They killed all the indie developers. That's what the indie apocalypse is. Yeah, but
that's what happened.
Yeah, the early scene was a lot more focused on individual creators, and now you don't get to hear that as often anymore, which is why we're doing our podcast, I guess.
Yeah, we're trying to save gaming individually, but we're going to single-handedly.
That's our job. We can do that.
Take that, journalists, in quotes. You're not even doing your job. But yeah, for me, last episode you talked about Christine Love and how she was recognizable name for you as you were getting into indie games. And I have to say, I think Terry Cavanagh was for me the same thing, even though I didn't play any of his games. I only heard about them online. I watched a lot of YouTube, basically. I was the kind of person who grew up with mobile games and the Wii because the Wii was the only console I had. I'm doxing myself here. I grew up in China. My only experience of gaming was when my dad took me to this bootleg shop and he was like, okay, you can pick one console, the Wii or the PS3. And I said, oh, I know the Wii. I've heard of that. I'll pick the Wii. And then we never deviated from Nintendo for the next 15 years or whatever. So I was kind of isolated. Yeah, it's the future. It might still be the future. Who knows?
Motion controls, they're really going to go off.
You're the controller, man. You're the controller. Yeah, but I always heard about gaming from YouTube, and I heard a lot about Terry Cavanagh through people covering indie games online, I guess because that was the era. And that was the name that stuck in my head, not I don't know, anyone that came later. Can you really name anyone who came later? I feel like after the indie game boom in the 2010s, auteurism kind of just receded for a while, other than Kojima, obviously. I mean, do people really talk about Cory Balrog, the God of War guy, as much? I don't think so.
I mean, in the indie scene, I feel like the last one that really popped off was Toby Fox. And then I don't think any individual really stuck out in that way in the general gaming public. But I don't know, maybe that could change. But I think that people are really less focused on individuals now.
It's okay. We'll fix it.
Yeah, we're fixing it.
All right. Terry Cavanagh. I want to give you a rundown of the history because I think it is important. Grew up in Ireland. Still living in Ireland, by the way. As a kid, he played weird budget platformers on the Commodore 64. Other kids were growing up with Sega consoles, I think the Saturn or the PlayStation or the Genesis. Meanwhile, all he had was a Commodore 64. So he was playing these budget platformers a lot of which were ripoffs of other more famous platformers, which he never played. And he was so interested in like the texture and like how they played that he started to learn the code a little bit with it. Although he didn't really play games that much. Later on, he played Final Fantasy VII when he was around 13 or 14, and he fell in love with video games. And he started making games in QBasic, which is a programming language, pretty shortly after that, and has been doing that as a hobby ever since. He studied mathematics in college, graduated, got a job as a risk analyst for Allied Irish Banks, which is I think, one of the most popular banks in Ireland, even to this day. And then he worked until he was 23 years old in 2007 and went, I don't like doing this. I don't like doing this at all. So at 23 years old, he quit his job and started going indie full time. He took out a loan and he was just like, I'm going to make video games full time and hopefully I'll be able to make money off of it in 2007. and yeah, funny story, he actually ended up doing this by accidentally telling all his coworkers drunk at a night out that he hates his job and he's going to make video games. And then his coworkers told his boss, and his boss came up to him and was like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I don't have enough money saved up, but I guess I might as well hand in my resignation now. Insane. People were just doing crazy things in 2007. Same thing with the story we told yesterday, or the story we told last week with Christine Love uh, suffering through college loans and working on her game instead of, her college her college classes. Anyways, he managed to get a little bit of money hosting games on Congregate, because that was something you could do back then. Just host games on Flash game providers, basically. He made
I think you can still do that if you want to.
Yeah, you're definitely going to make so much money off of that, though, right?
But yeah, Flash games are really in.
Everyone do it. Yeah, he made VVVVVV. It's 6 V's. I'm just going to pronounce it V from now on, as a commercial product. And ever since then, he's been making, I think, enough money to survive. Hopefully. I hope he's not like broke now. I think he's fine. But the reason I'm telling you all this is because from the year that he quit his job, 2007, to, I think, honestly, to this day, he has been mainly prolific through game jams. If you look at our research document, which is in the description, you'll see way more games than you would ever expect looking at Terry Cavanagh's stuff. And that's because he has a very, very specific process that he's outlined through many of his interviews and his very extensive blog about how he uses game jams to develop prototypes, and how his commercial games, of which he's only made 4 from 2025 minus 2007 is that's 18 years. Over 18 years, he's only made 4 commercial games. And these are all mainly from prototypes that he's made through game jams. So especially in like from 2007 to like 2016 or whatever, he was like especially submitting a lot of stuff to Glorious Trainwrecks, which is this kind of game forum which is dedicated to like encouraging game developers to submit especially shoddy work without caring how it looks. There's also Take Source UK, which was the blog initially, or like in this back half of his life, mainly maintained by Derek Yu, and it congregated a bunch of people who later went on to make games like UFO 50 and Spelunky. And of course, Ludum Dare, which was very big in the 2010s as like the de facto game jam. It's still around, but I think it's more spread out nowadays. But yeah, he's made so many games, most of which are game jam games and are now free, mainly to play on like Flashpoint, or his most recent collection, his most recent commercial game, which is a collection of his old games called Terry's Other Games. And yeah, he's just mainly made so much tiny things. And what you really learn when you play through these small games is how much his interest covers everything. I feel like you can get a very different impression just by playing his commercial games as compared to playing all of his really small games, including his commercial stuff. Speaking of which, Offer, do you want to confess your sin about what you played this week?
I only played the big games. I didn't play any of the small games. I saw the game jams on the list and I went, nope, I'm not playing that. I saw all these little special games, experimental, interesting stuff on itch, and I said, nope, I'm just playing the ones on Steam.
You lazy little fucker. I mean, look at how much we're being paid to do this podcast. I mean, we're not being paid at all, but like, it's the respect, it's the respect. You fucking everything up.
And I respected by playing the ones that I paid money for. That was respect right there.
Shameful. But actually, this sets up a good. Go ahead.
If you can't buy a game on the store, right? If it's not on Steam, is it even like important or interesting? Like, come on.
Does it even exist? Why would you sell your game for free if you thought it wasn't if you thought it was important, you know?
Like
You should
art,
sell.
passion, fuck that.
Yeah, fuck you.
So, do
But
you want to
yeah.
start with some of those smaller games, or should we get to the first big game?
Well, I think it's interesting now because we actually have a kind of experiment here. You've played only the commercial games, and I've played most of his games, not all of his games. I'm not saying that because he has like, I swear to God, he has like 90 something. I played the majority of them though. So I want to ask you, what's your impression of Terry Cavanagh? Like, what do you think his auteurist style is from what you've played of it?
So, from the commercial games I've played, I see like very gameplay focused, um, like retro inspired games that offer a lot of replayability. They're aimed at people who like are gamers and are interested in things like difficulty. And there's like an old school feel of being able to face really difficult challenges and having the joy of overcoming them, but it's also presented in a modern way where you have lots of different tries and your individual failures don't really mean a lot. So it's trying to like very quickly give you that dopamine rush of completed a difficult task while also making you not think too much about how that failure has impacted you and like feeling bad about not winning, and is trying to give you that experience of quick overcoming. There's also like a slight focus on story, whereas like there are a lot of interesting story elements to these games, but like it's kind of the joy of the excuse plot, but not it's still an excuse plot. It doesn't feel like he's actually interested in these plots. And there's also a big focus on music. I don't think that he ever composes any music for these games, but it feels like the music is really a big standout for it, and it really sets the tone for all of his games. That's my experience as someone who played all the commercial ones.
It's interesting because there's like a lot of stuff there that I agree with, but there's also stuff that I'm like, there's like almost examples that are like the complete opposite of what you're saying. um,
Interesting, very interesting.
let's start with a common point then. Let's start with V, which is the first commercial game he made out of four. Again, just want to mention it's insane. 18 years, he made four commercial games. Yeah.
Are we
But
just going to call it V?
I'm going to call it V. You can say the whole name if you want.
I'll call it V.
You want to put in the effort so bad.
I
Just
think
want to let you
Terry
know.
Cavanagh. I
Just
think
want to
that
let you
he
know
said
that
in an interview that he says the whole thing.
no, he says in an interview specifically that he says V.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well, I don't remember the interview very well, apparently.
You're not doing any. You're really falling behind this episode.
I swear to God, that's what I remember reading.
Okay, V.
Okay. V.
Yeah, I would say. Okay, first thing I want to say about Kavanaugh, I think all of his games are very concept driven. He says so himself. He starts with a concept, like something he really wants to do. Even if it's just like I want to mess around with like certain types of graphics for some kinds of games or something mechanically. Here it was definitely something mechanically. V is a game where you flip gravity. That's the concept, basically. It's a platformer, a precision platformer, where you're a character and you can flip gravity. You can't jump, and you can't flip gravity while you're in midair, so you have to be standing on the ground or whatever. So it basically becomes about like navigating obstacles while being upside down sometimes, or like having to figure out a path from one place to another while you're flipping gravity. And that's it basically. I mean, it's a concept, but it's like very simple to understand. I think that's part of what makes it so appealing. What do you think?
Yeah, it really takes the precision platformer um, genre and really iterates on it. It's not really deviating too much from the idea of like focusing on your movement style and structuring the levels around your restriction and just doing that one thing. But it is like a very novel and sort of mind twisty mechanic because you have to think about these levels in a completely different way than you usually would for most platformers where you're not going on the ceiling. It's the Super Mario Galaxy of 2D games. Um,
Whoa.
whoa. Yeah. And it's also structured to be like very short, small rooms and also being fairly difficult. So it's like a bunch of sequential short challenges, but also there's a lot of exploration where you can do a lot of these challenges in a different order, and it allows for a lot of exploration and creativity while also being very much focused on very tight precision platformer gameplay.
I'll just throw in my opinion here. I think V is probably I think one of the games that just kind of like got diminished in attention for me after playing it because it's like it's one of those games I think that are like that was like really big in the 2010s and it's still good, but I think it's just good. You know, it doesn't really go beyond that for me. I understand it was mind blowing at the time when it comes to indie games because it was such a big game. There's a whole open world overworld. There's a whole soundtrack, which is really good, the best part of the game. A mechanic that's like fully fleshed out, not really done before. I know other games did it before a little bit, but this is the game that like fully dedicates itself to it. And yeah, it's pretty big for an indie game. I mean, I finished it in like 3 hours, but that was very big back then. I don't know. Do you have any impressions of playing it for like where were you when it first came out? Did you even care about it?
I mean, when it first came out, I was still a dumb kid playing the Wii, not playing a lot of difficult games.
Pathetic.
Or actually, I was playing a lot of retro games, and I was aware of a lot of the sort of retro indie game community. I played like Cave Story and stuff, but I didn't play V specifically. I was aware of it, and it was something that I was interested in, but I didn't actually play it. I was playing Windows games on there, so I don't know why I didn't actually play it because I was very interested in that genre and I played a lot of retro games back then. But I guess it was just something I had heard of and knew about and knew that everyone like loved this game, but I didn't actually play for a very long time until the late 2010s. I think I was just like the late 2010s was a period where I was just looking at a lot of the games I didn't play in my childhood as being like, man, I should play those games and like sort of visiting the games I just didn't have a chance to play back then. And I played VV and it didn't really leave a big impression on me. I remember I did very much like it, but I didn't really love it. It is a game that you can very quickly play. I think when I saw my Steam page, I had like less than 2 hours on it. I think I beat it again in less than 2 hours. So I guess it didn't leave an impression on me, but I did enjoy it. But like now replaying it, I was like, oh wow, this game is really, really good. I love this. I don't know how long it's going to leave an impression on me again because it feels so compact and also focused on the sort of twitch reflexes instead of a narrative. And I think like narrative focused games usually have the biggest impact on me looking back on them because it's like more to stew with, whereas more gameplay focused games are like very much in the moment and don't really leave a lot to look back on. But I am very impressed on a technical level with the game design here and all the level design. And I'm gonna have the soundtrack on my YouTube music app for a very long time because I've just been listening to that thing over and over. It's
My
so
god,
good.
the soundtrack is so good. Yeah. No, I agree. That's what really struck me this time around. I mean, playing it years after all the hype has died down for V, and they're moving on to a lot of bigger games, even in the indie space. It wasn't really the shock of the scope that really hit me. It was more like how like precise and well intentioned the design is. I think Kavanaugh. One thing you'll find throughout his games is that he's very he's forgiving in a way. His games are challenging, but he forgives you in that, like, when you die in V, which is probably going to be a lot, it just starts you right at the beginning of that room. It never like kicks you back a few rooms back or back to the start of an area. It allows you to try that one room over and over and over again. So like when it comes to generosity and being able to do trial and error again and again, he lets you go in back in just like that, basically. Yeah, but I really like the kind of modular structure of the game has when it comes to designing things room by room by room. You're not really thinking ahead when it comes to like, oh, what's the next room going to be about? You're really just focused on like honing your craft in trying to get past this one room. And I think for me personally, it came down to like to a point where I was like tracing my path through specific rooms. About like it's about like having to have the perfect like 3 second performance when it comes to platforming to get past this one room. And if you mess up once, you die. So it's kind of like it's very precise. Like, I don't know, ballet. I've never done ballet. Like figure skating. I've never done figure skating either.
You keep making metaphors that I don't understand at all, but maybe someone else will.
You just don't get it, man.
But
Some figure skater ballet dancer is gonna be listening to this podcast and he's gonna be like, yeah, he gets it, you know?
but that's a very exhausting activity. You got to do that for a long time. I'd be out of breath. But for these games, like I mean, for V specifically, instead of being in a sort of continuous game world like I don't know Mario or something where you're scrolling across the screen and the screen is scrolling, so you just keep on going throughout the level as if it's just one continuous space. Whereas V is more of a bunch of interconnected rooms where each specific room is its own individual challenge. And that means that it's very consistent when you die in that room and you're just back to where you were. It's like you're not even cutting away from the action to do anything else. Like even something like Super Meat Boy, which is very quickly getting you back into the action after you die, you're still like sort of resetting yourself. Whereas with V, as soon as you lose, you just get straight back into it without any kind of barrier between you and what was happening before. It's just like a sort of continuous feeling of like, oh, I'm just gonna keep on doing this and keep doing it until I get it. And yeah, I think that makes V unique, especially with its single screen setup, that I don't really think I see in a lot of other indie games or games at all.
I'm going to move on a little bit. I'm still going to be on V, but I'm going to move on a little bit. Do you have anything else to say about the game design? No?
Uh it very quickly changes a lot of the level game mechanics. Like there is the classic thing of introducing the mechanic in a relatively safe area so you can understand it before you actually get into the more difficult aspects of it. But otherwise, like once you get a mechanic, you're gonna get like 5 levels of it very quickly. They're all gonna be really interesting and diverse challenges. While and then once you're done with that, it's just gone until like the end of the game where it tests all your skills with everything. So I think that's another aspect to it that works really well because it's cycling through a lot of things. It's showing the diversity of game design and pacing in a very fast way without getting the player really disinterested in anything. And I think that is all I have to say.
I think this brings me, this actually all supports my point in a very, very easy way to the point where it's like, we scripted this. We did not script this. Imagine scripting your podcast. That would be amazing. And this brings me to my main idea about Terry Cavanagh. Obviously, the auteur theory is about like taking a person, like a real life person, and stripping them down to like just a few ideas. But my main idea about Terry Cavanagh is that he's really, really good, I think, throughout all of his games at taking an idea and just like drilling down on it as far as it'll go, and then taking another idea related to that idea and drilling down on it. So V, to give you a little bit of history, it started off as a game jam game, as a game called Sine Wave Ninja, which was this endless game where basically it's not very good. You can play it, it's free, but it's not very good. It's basically this endless game where you're a guy just like endlessly rotating between two areas. You're like, there's like a line in the middle of the screen and you're falling up and then you're falling down and you're falling up and then you're falling down. And there's projectiles that go horizontally and you're trying to dodge them. And you basically survive by killing as many of these enemies as possible by firing and also by surviving as long as possible. That was later adapted into one of the levels in V, Super Gravitron, which is near the end of the game. It was so good that it actually ended up becoming ported to its own game for iPhone and iOS, I think, which means that he remade that Game Jam game into both a commercial game and then also an iOS game. Interesting. Anyways, the point is that he made this sine wave ninja game very quickly for Game Jam. He left it there for like years. Again, he quit his job in 2007. He took out a loan and started making games on his own. He didn't release V until 2010. So he for those 3 years, he was just making mostly free games and trying to host games on Congregate. And that was how he's mainly getting money. But even then, as he admits, that wasn't enough money for him to survive. So he was really just like losing money throughout those 3 years. But yeah, what's interesting about V is that he didn't intend for it to be his first commercial product, like going in. He just wanted to make a game for, I think it was for a game jam. And he was like, let me take this past idea from this game I made, Sine Wave Ninja, because I think I could improve on it. And he just kept working on it. And this happens a lot with his commercial games. He keeps admitting this. It just extended past the deadline, basically. So his commercial games always start as prototypes that just extend way beyond their scope. He worked on it for 6 months, not knowing where it was going to go. He didn't have plans for it or anything. And when he finished, that's what came out. And that's this process for all of his games. So yeah, I think that shows in V, in the kind of modular design, in like being, you can almost imagine him being like, I'm going to design this area because I had this idea for this mechanic. Like, here's an area where you touch a line and then you flip upside down, like a vertical line. Let's make a bunch of levels. I'll make a bunch of levels, seeing how far I can explore this idea. And then when I'm done, I'll just get rid of it and then we'll move on to another idea. And all these rooms, all these areas are split down into modular rooms, which are, just like one and done on their own. So the design process basically informs the structure of the game. This is like 101 stuff, but like, yeah, the his process when it comes to like just drilling down on an idea and then moving on without a grand overall plan, that leads to the modular design of V. And I think also a lot of his later games.
Yeah, I mean, if we're done on V, I just have one extra thing to say is that the level names are were all written by Bennett Foddy, who we covered just a few episodes ago. So we're expanding the Secret Boss cinematic universe, also known as
Wow.
real life.
And speaking on drilling down on things, he really does it with Super Hexagon, which you can already tell by the name was based on a game he made earlier, Hexagon. And I just want to mention this. Hexagon was a game he made for Glorious Trainwrecks' Pirate Cart, I think 5. Just want to mention this, not really relevant, but Pirate Cart 5 is uh, what Glorious Trainwrecks is all about. Was it was basically a game forum encouraging people to make really, really shitty games without worrying about the quality of it. And Pirate Cart was a thing they did every year where basically there was this thing called the Global Game Jam, which is like really professional, and it got 1,600 people to make 370 games in 48 hours, which is like impressive in a professional space. And and Glorious Trainwrecks was like, that's stupid. You got 1,600 people to make 370 games. I bet we can get 100 people to make 370 games in 48 hours. So they ended up making like 529 games, 106 people. So that's 5 games per person basically within the span of 2 days. And they released it in one gigantic exe folder. And they did this like year after year after year. And this was one of them. And this really pisses me off because Terry kept participating in this like year after year, but he made Hexagon, which is like a fully fleshed out, basically just like the first level of Super Hexagon, in one day. He made it in one day for, for the game jam, last minute. And if you play it, you're just like, wow, this is just Super Hexagon. It's, I don't know. Once you realize, because he lists a lot of the time periods when it comes to making these games, if you go to his blog and you see like the time spans when it comes to like how long it took him to make these games, I just kind of get mad, it just it just really pisses me off that he's really good at developing this stuff because he's like honed his really speedy craft over time, and he's very good at it. But yeah, Super Hexagon. Any thoughts on the game?
Yeah, so Super Hexagon is, I want to say like a rhythm game, but it really isn't. It's like an action game where you are playing as like a little triangle as your player character, and you are moving around this hexagon with a lot of bright colors that kind of looks like an abstract animation short, and you're trying to just avoid these different blocks that are falling towards the center of the screen of the hexagon, and just moving your character around left or right around the hexagon so that you're not getting hit. And this is all during a big loud music is playing. And it goes along with the beat, so it feels like a rhythm game, even though you're not like hitting specific beats like you might in Guitar Hero or something. Instead, you're just avoiding stuff while music is playing, and it kind of happens to go along with the music as you're doing that. So I'm not sure if I can call it a rhythm game or not, but it's also a very difficult game, and there's a lot of production value to. I mean, maybe not a lot of production value. It looks really good. The game is like moving throughout three-dimensional space. It's not just like seeing these lines and these shapes, but the game is rotating around as you're playing, and the camera is tilting, and you're also like getting these sort of pulsing in the shapes as the beat is going, and it adds to a really interesting experience because it really feels like you're working within an abstract animation short that is focused on music, but it's also a game that you're playing through, and you're just also like focused on avoiding all these blocks, and it's sort of a hypnotic experience that really isn't like anything else I've played, I don't think.
Yeah, it's like I feel like for me it's like psychedelic or like a mix of psychedelic and like 8-bit aesthetics, which I want to say is like Jeff Minter, but also I haven't played a Jeff Minter game at all, so I'm kind of a fraud for saying that. But like, yeah, a lot of psychedelic colors. I should also mention the hexagon of spinning, which I easily thought was the hardest part. Your character is just going around and around. even when you're not moving. But yeah, quickly to comment on the music thing, I feel like V also gets you in the rhythm of it, even though there isn't any rhythm basically within the game. That the music as a backing track, I think, kind of gets you in the mood to like keep retrying these levels over and over. And I think that kind of plays into it as well. But yeah, Super Hexagon. Yeah, not gonna lie, this is just my favorite game. Like without a doubt, this is my favorite game from Cavanagh. It's really good for me because I feel like I don't know. I can't really describe why I like it so much. I mean, part of it is that it's really hard, but also I don't like really hard games sometimes. I guess it's like the idea for me is that like visual presentation plays a big part in its difficulty, which I think is interesting. People will talk about how style isn't substance or how style is substance in like movies, but especially in this game, style is substance in that the the hexagon spinning around and flashing different colors at you makes the game harder. It does. It has an effect on you. And it's really more about like your will versus this extremely hard game and how you keep pressing on for it, I guess. Um, yeah, I don't know. There's really nothing like it. You look at footage of the game and you're like, what is this? Like, how can anybody play this game and like win? Especially like winning runs of like the very last level. Everyone go look up Hyper Hexagonist, the someone beating that level, because that's just like unspeakable. But like when you play the game, you really get into the zone. I refuse to say flow state. Everyone go, everyone go listen to the Game Study Buddies episode on flow if you want to know why. But yeah, it really gets you in the zone of like just like locking in and like your brain not being able to comprehend this much information. Like it feels like a game that's not designed for a human being, but simultaneously, when you get into it, somehow you transcend that. I don't know. It's such a strange feeling. I got the same feeling playing like Game and Watch games where it's like it gets really, really fast and you're kind of like filling in the gaps between all of these LCD frames or whatever. That's just getting more into my personal experience. I don't want to get too into this, but no, I think it's interesting. Yeah. And that's why this game is the most important to me, I guess.
See, when I play this game, I feel like it's the state I have when listening to like loud, exciting music. It's a very emotional game for me where I'm sort of visually seeing the expression of very quickly be focusing on all this overwhelming audio visual spectacle hitting me all at once, and it's very fast and loose. And also I want to mention that each of these levels are very short. It's just 60 seconds to survive this level and beat it. You can keep on playing afterward, but to actually just beat the level you just had to survive for 60 seconds, and it's really difficult. But yeah, the it really doesn't feel like the challenge or being the level is what makes this game interesting to me. It just really is that whole spectacle and the feeling it just really is the whole overwhelming feeling to play and how interesting a state it puts you in without even having to like think about like, oh, I'm just doing this so I can beat the level. It just feels interesting. And I want to make the comparison that it feels like a sort of audio visualization that you might see um for some song. Like, I don't know, there used to be old computer programs. I don't see anyone using them anymore, but there used to be computer programs where you could just plug in a song and then you'd see like, oh, all these vibrant colors as the song is playing. And it feels like the gameplay version of one of those. And I'm also interested. I didn't play Hexagon, but I'm interested. Like, was Hexagon more basic? Did it have that spinning and that camera tilting and all those pulsating in it, or did it not have that?
Okay, so I played Hexagon and it is a few different changes a little bit, but okay, well the graphics are a lot less sleek looking obviously because he made it in a day, but it's the first level of Hexagon, it's the same music, it's the same obstacles. There is still pulsing and the Hexagon is spinning. There's no like camera tilting. There's also none of there's also not that curveball the game throws you halfway through the level where it suddenly switches to a pentagon, although yeah, sorry, spoilers. Sorry to everyone. Sorry to everyone looking forward to
Spoilers for
spoilers
Super
for Super
Hexagon.
Hexagon. Yeah, the most pissing, the most evil part of the game though is that the walls that come. If you hit the side of the wall, it's a game over in Hexagon. So that's like the most. That's the part that pissed me off the most because like I beat like the first two levels in Super Hexagon and then I played Hexagon and I was like, why did you do this? I'm so glad Kavanaugh took that out of the main game. But yeah, like a lot of the like so many of the elements were already there. The spinning, the psychedelic aesthetic, basically. the pulsing. Like it's all there in the original. And the fact that he just came up with this in like one day is very impressive to me.
I just want to mention that I just like quit this game and then replayed it like over and over again. There were a lot of times where I played this and I was like, man, this is too hard. I give up. And I just quit playing it and then just like, oh man, I wanna play that game again. It felt really good to play. And I just picked it back up. It's like, okay, this time I'm gonna quit it and never play it again. And I picked it back up. I don't know how long this is gonna last for me, but it's lasted a good while. I also want to say that in a funny little UI kind of joke. The easiest level I think is called hard, and then the second one is harder, and then hardest. And I'm pretty sure there are much more difficult levels after that. So I didn't get to see what other jokes they put in for the game's difficulty, but I imagine it gets really, really hard.
Major spoilers for Super Hexagon once again. If you beat each level, you unlock the hyper version of that level. And so basically there's levels 4, 5, and 6 after that. And their difficulties are hardest est, and hardest est. I love that. But yeah, I think, yeah, the restarting thing, to go back to that, I think that ties into the idea of the modular thing again, about how he lets you restart very quickly and how he likes very short, I guess gameplay loops is the name. I don't know. But like, yeah, he lets you do very, very short things over and over and over again. And it's basically him, he likes restarting a lot, I guess. Both restarting in video games and also restarting in like game development in the first place. But yeah, he just took this idea and he drilled down on it. And I think it's very impressive. I don't have much to say about Super Hexagon. That's the problem.
That's okay. You can just say that you really, really like Super X.
Yeah, the moment you fuck up, like, at all, you're basically screwed. Like, I can't even name how many runs in Super Hexagon I've missed because I went, like, left for, like, 1 pintosecond, and I'm like, "Oh, I actually have to go right," and then I hit a wall and I die. So it's like you have to be very, very sure of yourself when you're playing these games, which I think is nice, yeah. He's forgiving, but also not forgiving in certain areas. So, Super Hexagon comes out, big hit just like V, probably got a lot of money for it. That game came out in 2012. 9 years later, in 2021, his next commercial game came out. Dicey Dungeons, which is a game he made actually in 2018, technically, because it came from another game jam. He submitted it for, well, he didn't. There is this game jam called 7DRL. I think it's still going. It's 7-day roguelike, basically. You have 7 days to create a roguelike. And Terry Cavanagh fully made this prototype for Dicey Dungeons that he didn't submit because he just didn't feel good about it for some reason. Although afterwards, he was like, I want to keep working on this because he had that feeling once again that like I want to keep expanding on this and seeing how this goes. So he kept working on it, and after a while, he was like, "Oh, this is my next commercial game. This is something big." I like the direction he went for this one because instead of just doing it solo, he ended up hiring a team of like I think like 6 people. It's definitely he never really worked outside of being solo. Usually, occasionally he worked with like another co-developer, which we'll talk about soon, but never with a group of like 6 to 12 people. So he did that for I think 3 years, and then he didn't come out with any games between 2017 and 2021. So I think he was just like fully drilling down on it. And then at last it came out, commercial release, and it was I think pretty successful. Yeah. What do you know about Dicey Dungeons?
Well, I know that it came out and people seem to really enjoy this game. It came out during the big roguelike deck builder boom and like very it came out just a couple of years right after Slay the Spire, so people were still pretty hot in that whole genre. Whereas now it seems like people are getting a little bit tired of it.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. I was like, for me, I can't confirm this. This is just my impression, but I'm like, this is kind of like the bugle call for the coming apocalypse of like gambling based roguelike mechanics because like the use of dice in this game is very specific, and I feel like I don't know. I just feel like there wasn't that much gambling stuff until after Dicey Dungeons. I'm sure you can find some kind of thread coming from Balatro to like Luck Be a Landlord to Dicey Dungeons or something, but I remember this being like a quote unquote influential roguelike, although I guess every roguelike that came out in the early roguelike boom was influential. But like, I don't know. I think you could draw a line from this to Balatro is what I think. But that's just my impression.
I'm not super deep into that genre, but I feel like I'm familiar enough with it to like hear about the big ones, but I hadn't heard very much about Dicey. I had like heard of the game, but I didn't really know of anything in specific, like I would have with for Slay the Spire and Monster Train, a bunch of other things. But yeah, so to talk about Dicey Dungeon, this is basically a Slay the Spire kind of like roguelike game where you're going throughout the game and you are going through an RPG system where you're defeating enemies, trying to bring down their health to zero, like you typically do in an RPG. And the difference is that one, this is procedurally generated, so you never really know what the game layout is going to be. You don't know what items you're going to get, don't know what enemies you're going to get, you don't know what the map is going to look like, and also the combat is done through dice. And functionally, this is not super different from a card-based game, but aesthetically and the way that you think about a dice based deck builder instead of like a card based one is a lot different because you typically have a smaller hand size. You're dealing with less dice. And what you're doing with the dice matters more than the cards you're drawing. So in a card based game, the cards that you draw, you look at the cards and you go like, okay, what can I do with this card specifically? Whereas with this dice based game, it's a lot more interested in risk management. It's trying to get you to think about like, okay, what can I do with the dice that I made and how can I optimize for future dice that I get, um, in a way that a card based game would typically use synergy to think about your future turns. Instead, Dicey Dungeon is trying to make you think about probability to plan out your future turns, which gives it a bit of a unique feel. Oh, do you have something to say?
No, go for it. I'm just like,
Oh, okay.
I'm getting ready to say something, but you finish.
Yeah. So the probability based nature of this game makes it pretty unique, but it does give you a lot of options to sort of plan out what your strategy is going to be and how specifically you're going to manage risk. But it's still very much a risk managing game that isn't really the focus of a lot of other roguelike deck builders.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I'm sure that's probably where he started when he came up with the idea for the game, being like, I don't want a game based on strategy and then the luck is kind of a background. I want to kind of foreground the luck when it comes to the roguelike. In a way, it's kind of like a weird, even though it came near the beginning of the big roguelike boom, it kind of feels like a retroactive criticism of the whole, of people's criticism of the genre. Because I hear a lot of people nowadays going like, "Oh, roguelikes are like, there's some skill involved, but they're mostly about luck. It's about what items you get in the run that may maybe help you get past the game." And this is just kind of like, in a way, kind of ribbing that from the start, being like, "Okay, well, if you think roguelikes are all luck, how about this? We'll make a game which is based on dice, based on luck in the foreground, and it's about what you can do even in spite of that." I don't know. That's my crackpot theory. Every episode, I have to do at least one crackpot theory about a game that definitely isn't true. But you know, I'm just I have to be the crazy one, so you be the sane one. It's a Boke Sakomi routine. Yeah, I would say Dicey Dungeons is. I mean, cat's out of the bag. I don't think we both really love this one that much, do we? Terry Cavanagh, I think, is interesting because he says in multiple interviews while he was releasing the game, "This is my best game. Like this is the best game I've
Really?
ever made." Yes.
Really?
Yeah, and that really interests me because I'm like, I mean, obviously he has a different perspective, but I'm like, I've played your other games, man. You got to give yourself more credit.
Okay. I think there's a thing with a lot of artists and creators that the most recent thing that they made is their best one in their perspective. Because
To be
I
fair,
was looking at
he spent like 3 years making this game, so which is the longest he's ever spent on a game. So yeah, probably.
yeah, especially if you're dedicating so much time on it. I was just like thinking back to the Christine Love episode where she was like, "Get in the Car Loser is my best game, and it's the
She
most
said
recent
that.
game." And also, yeah, she said that,
Oh,
and yeah, and we both strongly disagreed there. And I also strongly disagree with Dicey Dungeon being the best Terry Cavanagh game because I really do not like this. I think it's honestly my least favorite roguelike or deck builder I've played ever.
damn.
I really don't like it.
So what don't you like about it?
So again, I'm really someone who dislikes, I won't say gambling. This isn't a gambling game because you're not like actually spending money on it. So I can't really honestly call it gambling. But it is it is a game that's very much focused on luck and it's a kind of push your luck kind of game. And and I think that those those kind of games can be fun, but they tend to be fun on a sort of communal thing. Like if I'm playing poker, poker is fun because I am risking things and I have other players around me that are like I I have some amount of familiarity with, and there's just this kind of interplay between us where we're thinking about what our hands are. Is like, okay, how risky is this other person going to go, and how good is it going to feel when I do this risk? How bad is it going to feel when I lose? How good is it going to feel when I win? And if I'm doing like blackjack, even though that game is technically only played by myself, it's technically a format that is played with other people around you. So like they're invested in the risk that you're taking as well. Um, and I would never play blackjack by myself because that sounds really fucking boring. But with Dicey Dungeon, the video game is typically something that you play by yourself. There isn't a multiplayer mode in it, and I'm not a game streamer, so I don't really have like other people watching me play the game. So there's not other people that are interested in the risks that I'm taking. So it's just me like sort of strategizing like, okay, what is the most optimal thing for me to do? And is it going to work out for me? And then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work out for me. And the game is also like very small numbers. So it's pretty easy to calculate the probability in your head for a lot of different options. Like if you're trying to get a 6 and a 6 is going to win you the game and a 5 is going to lose you the game, you can very quickly go like, oh, okay, I have a 1 in 6 chance of losing this round. I mean, I have a 1 in 6 chance of winning this. And that can be like pretty frustrating in a way that a most other deck building roguelikes would sort of abstract away. Like unless you're really deeply invested in Slay the Spire, you're probably not going to be doing the calculations going like, okay, this one card is going to win me the game, and then if I draw anything else, I'm going to lose. You don't really have that transparency in knowing the outcome of how the match is going to go. But with this game, you know what's going to happen most of the time, and it can feel very frustrating to lose that because I really hate that kind of luck based. Like I'm sure that if you are familiar with Dicey Dungeon, then you can get through this game without much trouble and without having to take very much risks. But as a casual player, I find it very frustrating to just screw up just because I didn't get what I wanted out of a roll, and it just feels bad.
Yeah, I guess. I guess I'll give my impressions on the game. I also kind of feel the same way in that I'm kind of simultaneously underwhelmed and frustrated by the game. I think a lot of people nowadays, looking back on it, call it kind of like a baby's first roguelike. And indeed, when it comes to interviews, Cavanagh talks about accessibility being a big part of the game. He wanted to make this game as a kind of way to show people who haven't played roguelikes what he finds interesting about the roguelike, since it wasn't very popular back then. So it was kind of him introducing these concepts within smaller batches. Obviously, you have the 1 to 6 probability system, which is very easy to calculate. But also, when it comes to like completing a run, it only takes like 6 floors, and you can beat a floor in like, I don't know, 10 minutes. Honestly, it's pretty easy to get to the end of a run of Dicey Dungeons. It's just that sometimes you also die a lot in the process. So again, that modularity is being used in this kind of easier version of the roguelike where you don't have to keep up with so many variables. But also, this is coming from a guy who's played Balatro before and got really into it. Yeah, it just kind of feels underwhelming in a way, in both a positive and a negative way. Negative in that I'm obviously like, I'm less invested in this. And sometimes when I lose, I'm like, I can't think of anything I could have done better, you know? I'm like, I think I did everything I could, and it was just luck that screwed me over. In a weird positive way, though, it kind of feels less exploitative than Balatro. I don't know. You haven't played Balatro, Author, but like anyone who's played Balatro who's listening to this, kind of, I think understands that the game's really fun. It's much like it's much more designed to be fun than Dicey Dungeons, I think, but also there's like an insidious exploitative aura behind it between all the gambling mechanics, between all the gambling aesthetic stuff and the weird music going on in the background. You kind of feel like its goal is to exploit you. With Dicey Dungeons, it's kind of like a turn your brain off and play kind of thing, where I'm like, where I finish it and I don't really feel compelled to go back to it. It's not like an addictive game, which is a good thing. I'm starting to realize this is the most backhanded compliment of all time, but like, I don't know. I like it from this perspective. This is, I want to say, I don't know. It's weird to mark eras within a person's life. I want to say this is the start of Terry Cavanagh's quote unquote nice era. Like he wasn't nice before. which is weird. But like, I think Cavanagh got a reputation with V and Super Hexagon for being like this especially cruel, like crushing kind of Bennett Foddy kind of person, even though he wasn't. I mean, again, like we said with V a billion times already in this episode, he is forgiving in that he restarts you at the beginning of like whatever you last saved off of. But like with this especially, he specifically changed the aesthetic for this game from kind of like his weird pixel art, kind of like hard hitting aesthetic to a softer, I don't know, how do you describe the art style for this game? Very cutesy, you
I
know?
think it's kind of like cozy game art style
Yeah,
where
that's it.
like soft colors, a lot of round animation, very lighthearted dialogue, and smiling faces. Even though it's a pretty difficult game, there's kind of a bit of a contrast there, but it still feels very comfortable.
It's like a game you could play for your kid or like introduce to your kid. I can imagine somebody introducing this to their kid
If
to
you
get them
hate
into
your
video
kid,
games. And then your kid is like, I'm never going to play another video game again. I'm going into construction. Fuck you. But yeah, no, he was like very, very into community, which I'll bring up later. But community has always been a big part of Kavanaugh's games, but he especially went into it here when it comes to getting a development team. And also, he was showcasing his prototype in a Discord server and asking for frequent feedback from his fans who had played his previous games. So he was just like constantly releasing builds basically and getting feedback from people in his Discord server and modifying things based on that. So it was kind of like a crowdsourced kind of video game that he developed over 4 years, and that's what came out, which I think is interesting. It kind of signifies a turn, I think, in Kavanaugh becoming much more people oriented. I mean, he was before, but he's becoming a lot more of that now. And yeah, it's a weird turn because it still retains that kind of like Terry Cavanagh cruelty in the background. Like, we keep describing the idea of restarting over and over because things are so difficult. He basically took that idea and put it in the genre where that's most fit to be, which is the roguelike, which is all about restarting because things are so hard in the first place. But yeah, it's like he's taken that past aesthetic and kind of transformed it into a new aesthetic while keeping the things he likes in there, which I think is a very good, very interesting transformation.
I also want to mention that Dicey Dungeons doesn't really have a lot of really wacky things happening. It's a very stripped down, straightforward kind of game. For most roguelikes that are popular nowadays, uh, a lot of the appeal comes from the randomness, giving a lot of like really wacky combinations of items that will give you all sorts of interesting things. Like in Slay the Spire, you can pretty easily get a deck that is going to give you infinite damage or infinite cards or a bunch of just random stuff happening. Or if you're playing The Binding of Isaac, you can get a combination of items that will just spray bullets all over the screen. You don't even have to aim. It's just complete mayhem happening. But with Dicey Dungeons, there are a lot of items and there are interesting combinations, but there really isn't anything like game breaking and there isn't anything super wacky. It feels like when you get the items, it's still fundamentally the same gameplay and you're not really changing your, maybe not fundamentally the same gameplay, but you are doing a lot of the same processes and thought, and you're not like, it doesn't feel like you're playing a completely different game. It feels like you're playing the same game, but with a slightly different mechanic. And I think that's interesting because it means that you're focusing more on the base mechanics of the game and not kind of throwing it out like a lot of other roguelikes might do. Unfortunately, I don't like that base gameplay, so I don't like it very much, but it is interesting and it is unique.
I think what separates Dicey Dungeons from those other roguelikes is that it doesn't really take a pleasure in like overkilling, you know? Like for me, there's kind of a satisfaction in The Binding of Isaac or Balatro in getting like the right amount of items and destroying a boss in like 2 seconds with your gigantic laser eye beam. That's from Binding of Isaac. Or in Balatro when you have an ante that's like 1,000 and you end up scoring like 1 million on it. There's like a pleasure in like completely destroying the barriers that the roguelike is giving you. Here, there's not really like a pleasure in like breaking out of the system of the game. It's more like you just kind of have to survive 6 floors. And then if you do, then you win. And I'm sure that's part of why it doesn't really resonate with many roguelike players nowadays, because now they just want to, it's all about destroying things or dying horribly, which I respect. To be honest, I am more of that mindset, which I think is why this game didn't really click with me when it comes to like being addicting or like super, sucking in. But I think that's okay because that means I don't have to play it anymore. Back to Super Hexagon.
Yeah, just gave me the thought that a lot of the roguelikes I play, I feel like I spend way too much time on because I'm trying to find all those wacky combinations, even though there's like only a small chance I'm going to actually get them. And it's like, oh, I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm gambling to try and get the combination of items that I think would be really cool. Whereas most of the time I wouldn't even get that. And that is also kind of a risk management thing, but overall I still enjoy it more. Also,
Yeah,
I want to recommend Slice and Dice, which is a completely different dice-based roguelike deck builder that is way better. This is my first counter example recommendation because I just think Slice and Dice is so good. I really do not like Dicey Dungeons.
Jesus Christ. Okay. I didn't
Yeah,
hate it that much. I liked it.
I
Okay,
did.
whatever. My
It's
gosh.
my podcast too.
Yeah, a big part of those roguelikes to me is that kind of high when you finally do get the right combination of things, that weird combination you wanted, and you just blitz through like 10 levels by killing everybody with your extremely specifically designed strategy. It's like seeing something you have come into fruition. Yeah, in Dicey Dungeons, it's not really like that deep yearning for like, please give me this item, please give me this item, please give me this item. It's a chill game, you know? I think it's a very chill roguelike, and I think that's what distinguishes it. Fuck chill games, fuck cozy games. Only hardcore gamers for the hardcore gamers, okay? Next episode, we're doing Wii Sports. Um, anyways. Do you have anything else to say about Dicey Dungeons?
Nope, I'm done
Okay.
hating.
And this brings us to his most recent game, 2025. This came out, I think, 6 months ago. Yeah, it's Terry's Other Games, which is not really, it's not really an original game. It's just a collection of a lot of his favorite games that he's made over the past few years, which is a good segue for every other game, which we're about to discuss right now. Yeah, I recommend this first off. I think this is a good way to play Terry's games, specifically the ones that he likes, because he adds a lot of good flavor text describing his process behind making them. And you get to see like kind of behind the scenes and what he was thinking and what he thinks of it now, looking back on it as, let's just say, a wizened game master. By wizened game master, I mean he's like a decade past his most popular game, which is like 50 years in like film director terms. Um, but yeah, Terry's Other Games is interesting because it's kind of like UFO 50. It reminded me of UFO 50 in that it was like a collection of his games. And they're so varied. I feel like it reminded me of the first row of UFO 50 because there's like, I don't know, there's a lot of arcade stuff there, but also there is like a lot of weird stuff there. Okay, I think it's finally time to talk about this. Did you know, Offer, that Terry Cavanagh is in some ways an experimental interactive fiction writer?
Believe it. I saw through a lot of his like interviews and AMAs that he really plays a really wide, diverse genres of games, but like it seems like his commercial games are just kind of sticking to this kind of same thing, whereas his specific taste is like everything. A lot of narrative based stuff he seems interested in. So it doesn't surprise me, but it is interesting that you don't really see that in his other bigger games. That you mostly just see the gameplay stuff and you don't really see a lot of his more interesting experimental or narrative driven stuff. So yeah, I'm interested to hear more about this.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how you could play Terry Cavanagh's like just his commercial games and have like a very different impression, I think, from what you get when you play a lot of his smaller games. That's a big thread throughout his work in that like his intentions going into a game often come out really, really weirdly compared to the final product. That's part of his process where he just goes in and he adds bit by bit by bit, and whatever it ends up as is might be completely different from what he came in as. But yeah, when he was talking about getting into games, initially, before he quit his job in 2007 to start making games, a lot of his planning behind games was mainly writing big RPG storylines. He was planning on making a very big RPG, I'm guessing like Final Fantasy VII, which would have a big overarching plot and stuff like that. And he said that he kind of sated dissatisfaction with Dicey Dungeons, but I don't know. I kind of want to see it. I want to see his 80-hour RPG. It would be interesting. But yeah, early Terry Cavanagh was really interesting to me. By early, I mean like 2008 to, I guess, everything before Dicey Dungeons, in that he's basically just like half making kind of shit posted games and also partly like arcade games, but also like partly art games. He's like cycling between the three. He's cycling between like complete itch.io shitposts that you would see nowadays to stuff that is like really difficult. Like, I don't know, I guess Bennett Foddy is the thing I'm getting off the top of my head, to also like Jason Rohrer games, like art games that were like proving video games could be pushed the medium forward. Like in the same game jam, he would be making, okay, first off, he collabs with a lot of people, which is interesting. Like I said, community is a big part of Cavanagh's kind of development throughout things. He encourages a lot of new game devs to just make stuff and interact with other people to see, to just like kind of get immersed in the community. And the result of this is that he ends up collaborating with a lot of people. Let me just read you the murderer's row of people he collaborated with, because I mean, I don't know. From my perspective, looking back on it now, there's like, scene was so small back then, but also so big in that like all of the heavy hitters were just there back then. So he was collaborating with Derek Yu, Bennett Foddy, Jack King Spooner, Jonas Caress. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Jonas Karatsis, who would later go on to make the Talos Principle. Robert Yang, Cactus, who would later go on to make Hotline Miami with a co-developer. C418, the guy who made the Minecraft soundtrack, he made a game with him at one point. So he was like a game developer at one point. And he was literally roommates with Inkrepare, Stephen Inkrepare Lavelle, who would later go on to make what several people call the greatest puzzle game of all time, Stephen's Sausage Roll. So already just like a vast variety of games, of game developers. And he was just like, this is just like the average scene back then for him. Yeah, it's crazy. He was very popular on TigSource, which was Derek Yu's kind of forum. Derek Yu didn't own it. He took it over, but he was basically managing it for a long time. But yeah, he made a bunch of games with them over time. And see, this is the part where it gets hard to describe, because it's like, again, there's so many different directions that these games go in. He has such a varied variety of things he's interested in that I don't really know where to start. Okay, let's start with the games he made with Inkrepare, which is interesting. I just want to bring up Inkrepare. Terry Cavanagh has made like 97 games. Inkrepare has made over the years like 500 games. He's just been releasing them. He's still releasing them. It's very funny to me. But yeah, Inkrepare was his roommate, maybe growing up in college. I don't know. He might just be living with him. And they basically just constantly collaborated on things in the early 2000s. And these are really interesting in that they're both playing with like post equality and also like narrative experimentation. For example, Judith, this was one of his more popular ones. He co-developed this with Inkrepare. It's this kind of horror game where you're playing as a guy who's cheating on his wife with this kind of mistress. And they go into this abandoned house to kind of just like shack up there for a while. And they think there's something wrong with it. But then the story suddenly cuts between that to a retelling of the Russian opera Bluebeard's Castle, which is a popular opera involving a woman named Judith entering a prince named Bluebeard, and she wants to be his wife, or she is his new wife, and he keeps revealing disturbing things about himself, and she's like, what's going on here? And it just keeps escalating and escalating. And the idea is that Bluebeard's Castle is the same space that the couple is visiting. So it's like cutting in between the two, between the past and the present. And it's about how like flashbacks that these characters don't know about can affect the story while not even being really related to the story, because the two stories don't really converge. It just becomes a point of like comparing and contrasting, I guess. And apparently none of this was behind the concept in the first place, because according to interviews, Terry Cavanagh was just like, yeah, I just wanted to experiment with some like graphics shaders, and we ended up making this game. Very weird to me. But yeah, narrative experimentation, especially with narrative form, is something that you see throughout Cavanagh's games. Do you have anything to say about Judith, or do you just want me to move on?
I just think that's fascinating how different that is. And it feels like a very, based on what you said, like surreal and Lynchian maybe, or am I getting that wrong?
I would say it's a little Lynchian. Yeah, it's a lot of empty hallways, like Inland Empire. Although there isn't really like a big scare. That's the thing. People were very disappointed by the ending, because it's like, it feels like the two plots are going to converge, but spoilers, it really doesn't. It just kind of ends there, like right before any kind of climax could happen. Not a cliffhanger.
So you're saying it
like,
should have had Slender Man at the end?
Yeah, no. Judith 2, when's that coming? Imagine his next commercial game is Judith 2. Remember Judith? Remember everyone? My new game, Judith 2, $15.
You know, it worked for Lisa the Painful, so
That's
maybe you
true. It
could.
did. It did. Yeah. But like he gets into that with other stuff. Another one of my favorites is Moving Stories, which is kind of adapted from something he did before called Pathways. Pathways was apparently one of his most famous narrative games, although he refused although Kavanaugh didn't include it on Terry's other games because he said he didn't really vibe with it anymore. And I have to say, I also don't vibe with it because it's not good. It's basically this game where you're a guy and you can take multiple pathways. You can go to the left path or go to the right path. And that ends up changing your story. It feels very straightforward, like, oh, what path you go down determines what happens to you. I don't know. That's like a very straightforward thought to me. But also, there's an interesting thing in it where going down a path and wandering into the place changes the context of your character because, like, you're not told about who your main character is beforehand. You're not given his name or anything. You're just kind of walking around. But if you walk into a bar, suddenly he's like, he knows the bartender and he has been like placing bets with like the bookies over there. And the story becomes like, oh, the bookies are going to beat him up because he's not paying for his bills back or whatever. But you go down this other path and you meet this gigantic troll, and all of a sudden it becomes the story about how he's a valiant knight trying to kill this troll. So, suddenly the game will suddenly shift time frames entirely from like modern day to the medieval ages, depending on what path you go down. So in a way, it's like the time frame, the context, whatever, it's all very fuzzy and established at the beginning of the game. And as you go down a path, a specific path, the context of the game itself and the world itself becomes more clear as it goes on, which I haven't seen any other game do before. It might also be a commentary, a weird kind of subconscious commentary on Kavanaugh's process, where it's like going down this specific path leads to this specific context being generated retroactively for the entire game or whatever story you're telling, which I think is interesting. Anyways, the game is bad. I'm saying all this about a game I don't even enjoy. What I really want to talk about is Moving Stories. Sorry, do you have anything to say about that? Pathways first?
Well, I mean, it sounds really interesting to me. It seems like a commentary on games and choice and how, like, it doesn't necessarily imply continuity in between choices and routes. And I'm really interested to know, like, why the game is bad, in your opinion. Like,
The
what's going
game.
on there?
Yeah, I didn't even say that. The game is bad because all the plot lines are bad. They all feel like they're being written by a 14-year-old. Basically, there's not even like a 3x structure. There's not like a 3x structure or anything. Like the story I told you about the guy where he walks into the bar and the bookies are going to beat him up. It literally just ends right there. Like the whole story is the context being given to you in the first place that bookies are going to beat him up. That's the end of the story. He doesn't do anything. He just gets beaten up. And another story is like, oh, there's a zombie apocalypse. That's it. End of story. So it's like he's I guess it's a game more about the beginning of stories, which you can say to kind of defend it, but also like, look, let me just move on to Moving Stories, which is way more interesting because it takes this idea in a much better direction. This is a game you did with Incompare, where basically, actually, maybe you like Pathways more. I don't know. This is personally just my impression. But Moving Stories is basically a game where you see a woman and she's packing up to move. She has a suitcase. She's like packing up everything in an apartment because she's moving soon. And she looks at the player and goes, I need your help to help me pack this stuff. And it basically cuts to this kind of like grid-based, how some video games have this kind of grid-based inventory where like each inventory item has like a certain amount of, is like a 2x2 square or 1x1 square. You can only fit so much into like whatever bag you have. It's basically like that. So you're like dragging and dropping these items. You can't fit all of them into the suitcase. And you're basically like, yeah, what should I put here? What should I put there? You don't really know what you're doing at first. And then when you've finished, basically, what you choose to pack in the suitcase and what you don't choose to pack in the suitcase ends up determining the context for who this woman is, basically. So after you finish packing it, she goes through all the items within her suitcase and gives like little commentaries on it, on why she specifically chose to pack those things in the suitcase, not you, why she did it, and also why she chose not to pack these things in the suitcase. Like it was her choice, basically. So it ends up basically every run you're doing, because the story is very quick. Once you finish packing, the game just basically restarts. What you're doing basically with every run is you're shaping the context for this person. So it becomes a character study where you're determining what kind of character it is, but also the game is deciding based on your choices, what this woman is basically. So sometimes when you throw away a scarf, she'll be like, I just don't really want this scarf. But if you throw away a scarf along with some photos of your boyfriend, she'll be like, this was his scarf. I really hate this. I really hate him. I hate the scarf. I just want to throw it away. So it becomes like the combination of items that are being packed and being thrown away contribute to this woman's life. So it's like the idea being that the amount of stuff you accrue throughout your apartment ends up dictating in some way who you are. So its pathways apply to character more than story. What I really love about this is how the game starts fucking with you, because after every run, you start getting new items to add. It gets increasingly crazier and crazier. So it starts off very simple, but then at some point you get like, oh, new item, a gun. You have a gun now. You can choose to pack it or not to pack it, and she'll commentate on it. New item, jar of piss. What does that say about the woman if you choose to pack it or not pack it? And then the final item is just severed hand. I love it.
I am sold on this game. I was gonna say that it sounds like a lot like a precursor to something like Unpacking or Florence, but it's like, oh man, this seems like something completely different. It seems fascinating to me. I kind of want to check this one out.
Yeah, I love it because he's like taking these ideas and just like stretching them to see how far they can go. Yeah, he really gets like, he goes in hard on these narrative experimentations, which is interesting. Also, another quick one I want to mention is pretty, I think this one's really funny. You could say the Stanley Parable ripped this one off. Actually, I don't know when it came out. Maybe this ripped off the Stanley Parable.
Probably came after the Stanley Parable, but
Yeah.
I know you're doing a bit.
When did the Stanley Parable come out? The first, the mod.
I want to say 2009. Let me check. Oh, 2011.
Did you say 2011? Yes. The Stanley Parable ripped off this fucking game, all right? What? Wham Levrov, 2010. He co-developed this one with Chris Jan. I don't know. I don't really know who this developer is because we don't really see him again after that. Wham Levrov really is really funny to me because it's like basically like it's set up like a basic RPG. There's no text or anything, but you're playing this character and like you start off in a meadowy field and there's like you can go in 4 different directions basically. It's top down. And you go up and it's like, and the screen just goes black and goes paradox, and then it restarts you from the beginning. And then you realize over time that the game wants you to go in a specific direction and just is kind of restricting you whenever you do something it doesn't want you to do. But the joke is that it's not really signifying to you what it wants. So you go into like this big overworld map that's like an RPG, and you go into a town and it's like paradox. Don't do that. You have to go to this specific town. And this joke just basically keeps on going where it's like, you have to talk to this NPC. You have to do this specific thing. It is like the game is basically dictating what you want by giving you the illusion of freedom, but also just completely taking that away from you. And the best part of the game is when you walk into a room and it's like, there's like, it's basically a shop and there's like 3 walls and there are like 18 dildos on all of these walls. And you keep walking into each dildo and the game's like, no, don't pick that one. You have to walk into like every dildo until you finally get into the right one and the game lets you continue. It's a very short game, but I think it's very pierced when it comes to pointing at that idea of like, I don't like this in video games and I'm going to interrogate that. Again, it's just like more interrogational than, this is more confrontational than I think some full-on interactive fiction writers, which is interesting. It is like, just like a I don't care kind of attitude, which is nice.
Yeah, I think
That's
that
all
really shows a lot of Terry Cavanagh's really deep investment with the gaming medium and like interest in so many different genres and thoughts about it, even though that isn't like really reflected in his commercial work, which is like a really big difference, I think.
Yeah. I would say if there is something that categorizes stuff earlier on, it's that he's just kind of like fucking unhinged. Like he makes a bunch of crazy games that are just like, they feel like tonally the games of an edgelord, which you really don't really get from V and Super Hexagon. Not like a controversial edgelord, but just kind of like a mischievous one. Like one that really finds poop jokes and butt jokes funny. I just want to mention, he's made like 9 games of Incompare, and nearly all of them have nudity in them. Just like penises or like people flashing tits and stuff like that. It's great. For one game jam, a glorious Trainwrecks game jam, he made a series of 3 games of Incompare they're all called Crush Fetish. Basically a game where you're a pixel and the giant foot is stomping on you. And if you get stomped on, then you die. And also at the bottom of the screen is your health bar, and it's a picture of a penis. Just like a fully erect penis that slowly goes up and down. It's great. I love it. Yeah, he was just doing this between making V and Super Hexagon.
Wonderful. So, yeah, any other of the smaller games you want to talk about?
Yes. So yeah, that kind of brings up the idea of games being kind of shit toasty. He does do that a lot. There's one game I mean, he makes like really stupid games. I think one thing about Kavanaugh is that if he has an idea, I think he will just do it personally. There's a game called Escape, which you can find on Flashpoint, which is basically you're a little character in a well, and the well is too tall and you can't jump high enough. It just says escape at the top. And you can't do anything until you press the escape key and it says you win. And that's the entire game. I love that. I love that
Good
he'll
game.
just submit whatever. I know that sounds like such a backhanded compliment. Like, I love how you just wear whatever, but like, this is like really good. Like, if you have an idea, just take it, you know? He doesn't hesitate. I love that about him. Another thing is that he got into like the fantastic arcade kind of market where it's like, you know, the local co-op stuff that Bennett Foddy was doing, like getting people to play on one computer and stuff like that. He got into a lot of stuff like that too. So you get a lot of 2D co-op games. But one of my favorite games is called Not Tub. It's like, I don't know why it's called Not Tub. It looks like an acronym. But then it's basically a game you walk up to, which is a computer, and it's like press space to play, have multiple players playing. You press space and then it immediately starts like intense music and then a countdown from 10 seconds and then text that goes the player furthest away from the computer at the end of the time limit wins. And that's the entire game. I can imagine how much he laughed setting it up at the booth and watching people play, not knowing what's going on, pressing space, and then immediately booking it away from the venue. Other people are watching them run and being like, what's going on? Just like a bunch of people running away in a public arcade venue. It's so fun. But that's the kind of game he was making. Yeah. He was just like, I have an idea. Fuck you. I'm making it, which I love. Yeah. And then you have games like, which are very, very detailed, which really surprises me. He made games called, like he got popular early on for making games called like Squish, which was like a parody of Crush, the PSP game. But that game has like 50 levels in it. And it was just like casually one of the games that he released alongside the other ones. But there's another game called We Love Mind Control Rocket, which he co-developed with Derek Yu, of all people. Just like, you know, a Terry Cavanagh, Derek Yu joint. And it's like a fully optimized resource management sim that I couldn't even get into because I walked into it and I was like, I have like 1 day left until we have to do this recording, so I can't play. There was just too many stuff. There's too much stuff in it. It's like a full on, I guess you can say like Risk, where it's like you're defeating other countries and stuff like that and managing your soldiers. Kind of like Civilization, I guess is more like that. And this is just one of the games he made. He did make a game very recently that was a big hit, which I just want to mention. A Proper Cup of Tea is really interesting to me because it's like he made this game supposedly when he was just like, I don't have enough time to make a video game. I think he has a kid at this point. This is 2024, so this is very recent. But there's this app called Overflow, which can make like really simple, like I guess visual novels on your phone, basically, by taking pictures and like putting choices there. So he made this very simple game where he's like, help me make a cup of tea. And I don't want to spoil it, but it's very, very hard to make what he considers the perfect cup of tea. You choose all the ingredients in this proper order, and it's very comedic and really funny, honestly. And he grades you based on how well you made a cup of tea. I love it. It's like one of his best games, unironically, because it's so fun and so like to the point. It's lighthearted. And I don't know, even if you go on backlog, there are a lot of people being like, this is one of Terry Cavanagh's best games. And it's just like a game he made on an afternoon, being like, what cup of tea do you want to make on this afternoon? Which I think it's interesting that he has that kind of level. But anyways, yeah, he makes very detailed games. Honestly, if there's one thing I figured out over time is that I love a lot of his smaller games. Like there's a lot of them that are really good here. A lot of which actually made it into Terry's other games. For example, there's Tiny Heist, which is this tiny roguelike, this stealth-based roguelike he made in 2017 before Dicey Dungeons. So he was already interested in the idea of making roguelikes. But it's this very stealth-based roguelike. And this is just like better than V and Dicey Dungeons, in my opinion. It just is. And it's like a full game I haven't even really completed yet, and he just released it for free. It's this kind of ASCII-based top-down game where you're a stealth thief and you steal gems, and there are guards with lines of sight and everything, and you have to kind of just like navigate around them. All the levels are very short. You can go out to get gems and power-ups at the risk of getting caught by people, or you can just move on to the next level. And it's like kind of a thing where you're like mixing and matching, taking a risk or not taking a risk, but like it's very, very unforgiving. The second you get caught by a guard, you have to like book it extremely fast, like down to the pixel, otherwise you die very quickly. So in a way, it's like it's more unforgivable than It's more unforgiving than Dicey Dungeons, but somehow like still just as cute and like really fun. I'm not gonna lie, part of the reason why I did the Terry Cavanagh episode is because I partially rediscovered him in college, and I'm not kidding you. I spent multiple classes in college playing Tiny Heist, just like over
It's
and
like
over.
during the like lectures and everything, just playing the
Yeah, I
games.
would say I played Tiny Heist like time wise, possibly more than Super Hexagon and the, his bigger games. So yeah, that's just kind of like casually free. You can play that. Other games he made, Naya's Quest is really interesting in that it's a puzzle game where it's based on, isometric views. There's like kind of cubic isometric views in video games. And basically what he figured out is that video games, because isometric games have that kind of 2D but also 3D kind of aesthetic, you can kind of make very, very confusing platforms with isometric views. So Naya's Quest is basically a game about like jumping on a cube that you think you can land on, but then you just end up falling through it onto the ground because you can't rotate the map or anything. So it's about like figuring out an extremely confusing visual aesthetic, which if you want to link it to his other games, I think Super Hexagon is all about trying to figure out a very confusing visual aesthetic. So he has that through line going through his games. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have much to say about that, but that is casually just like one of my favorite games. Top 5 favorite Kavanaugh games. There's also Mr. Platformer, which is very interesting. Again, going back to the kind of modular level structure, he made this game where he was sick, apparently, which is crazy to me because it's like a really good platformer. It's a game that's kind of riffing on all the pastiche. It's like a pastiche of basically every platformer you've ever played. The guy is basically it's called Mr. Platformer. You collect coins. You have a certain amount of lives. If you hit spikes, then you die. There's a desert area. There's a water area. There's like a ladder area, like a lot of Mario games or a bunch of like 2D platformers, basically. But the idea being that you can choose whatever amount of levels you want to go through throughout the specific run, and you finish multiple runs, and at the end of every run, it tells you how many levels are remaining at the end. So you're kind of incentivized to play through multiple runs and see how many scores you can rack up on the best of your runs to kind of see what you get by the end of all of your runs. So it's kind of like a long play, short play kind of thing, which is interesting. And there's also a very, very interesting plot. Spoilers for Mr. Platformer, the freeware game you can play in an hour or 2 hours that was released for free by Terry Cavanagh. It has this surprisingly really crushing plot. I'm not even kidding. There's no dialogue in it or anything. Mr. Platformer is barely a character, but every time you finish a run, you climb this clock tower, and there's text there. The only text in the game that says every cut kills and every cut hurts and the last one kills. And then you finish the run and it tells you how many levels are left. And then you realize that as you're finishing more and more levels, the levels are getting drained of their color. And you finish the game, there's no ending screen. You finish the game by finishing all these levels and like wandering through the unfinished ones, like which are just like empty, drained husks. And when you finish all the levels, the entire game is drained of color and text, and you play forever until you stop playing until you close the game. So it's just like the the ending is basically there's no ending. You go through the same run that you did, but it keeps telling you 0 levels left, and all the levels are just empty husks that you keep proceeding through. Just really depressing. There's no ending screen to it whatsoever. And I can make a big point here about how decay, weirdly enough, is a big theme in Terry Cavanagh's other games, because it also appears in Naya's Quest. In Naya's Quest, there's this big meta narrative about Naya's world, who is the main character. Naya, her world is collapsing, but also it's clearly a game world because you see like little debug screens that she can't see and like little glitches in the background. So the game she's in is collapsing, and you're trying to, as she says, the goal in the game is to reach the edge of the world, which people haven't seen before, but she's going to try and get there. And spoilers for Naya's Quest, she never does. The game ends with her forever traversing the end, trying to get to the end of the world while the world collapses around her, and then the game just ends. So yeah, just like weirdly, casually depressing stuff also, which I think you can draw levels to kind of like exhaustion there. Like again, this ties back, if you want to the idea of Kavanaugh drilling down in these games until there's literally nothing left in developing them. And I think he kind of feels maybe some kind of frustration in like going as far as he possibly can with them until they're drained of the color and then abandoning them for the next project or the next project or the next project. It's both a process that really rewards him and kind of takes away from him.
You know, I thought I was safe not playing all these short games. I figured that there were going to be a lot more gameplay focused things and I could just continue to riff off what I was saying before. But wow, there's really a lot to these games. I really didn't expect that. That's pretty incredible.
This is why you do the research, motherfucker. No, I'm
You
kidding.
know, I don't have any regrets. I enjoy getting playing through the games I did play through because you know we can't play all these games. We can't do all the games that someone played. It's not efficient. And you're going to see that once I do my next recommendation for the next person
No.
we cover.
Oh no. I'm already dreading it.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, there's also a lot of community-based stuff to go back to that. There's Chat, which is an actual chat room he made. It's like a chat room-based game where people are collaborating, I think, to progress the story. So like you're playing with live players, but you're also like collaborating to actually play with stuff. Also, funny story, I found on Terry Cavanagh's blog, he was like, oh, someone ported Chat to modern browsers so you can actually play a live version of it online. And I was like, oh, interesting. I connected to it. There are people still playing on Chat to this day. And I chatted with them and they're like, come to our Discord server. So now I'm part of their community, I guess. Their weird community for a Terry Cavanagh game, which has like
Wait,
six
so on
people in it.
this chatting game, they migrated over to a chatting platform? Is that
Someone
right?
ported it. So no, it was originally like a genuine chatting platform, but the technology for that died obviously because it was made in like 2012. But somebody ported it to modern platforms who wasn't Cavanagh. And I joined that and I ended up finding a server of people who were playing the very day I was playing. And it turns out they just kept logging in day after day into this now completely empty chat room because they had basically exhausted all the plot lines of the game. So they were just like wandering around. um, it's weird. Yeah, it's like a dead mole, a hashtag liminal space, if you will. But yeah, he also got really into Roblox in 2021, which is interesting. He was playing a lot of Roblox games and he found it interesting because it was like its own kind of bubble when it comes to like a gaming community. So he made 2 games. He based them kind of on other types of Roblox games, but he was basically making games that were like chat rooms because there are a lot of multiplayer focused games in Roblox where you could like chat while playing the game. So he made a game called Climb the Giant Man Obby. Obby is a term in Roblox when it comes to like 3D platforming, I think. I haven't really looked too much into it. But it's basically a platforming game where you're trying to climb a giant man by jumping up platforms. It's kind of like Only Up, but not using plagiarized content. But like, it's like, yeah, you're climbing this giant man, which is a big sculpture of Terry. And when you get to the top, you jump in his bald spot, Terry Cavanagh's bald spot, and there's a chat room there which you can talk to other people within. And there's also another game called Anyone Can Be Struck by Lightning at Any Time. That's the name of the game, where it's a chat room basically, but also randomly lightning strikes and kills a person and removes them from the chat room. There's just a bunch of people sitting in a chat room and they're talking, and every once in a while, like lightning just strikes and kicks them from the server, basically. So it's like you're chatting on a time limit, which is very strange. Yeah. So he was just making these kinds of games for fun. I'm not really going anywhere with this. I just think it's interesting all the different directions he's going in, which is, yeah. I have 2 personal hidden gems that I want to shout out though. Naya's Quest is very popular. So those are his more popular games. But I think there are 2 games that were kind of left behind that I played and I was really impressed by. I have 2 personal games that I think are hidden gems that I don't see many people discuss nowadays that I want to direct people to because they're some of his best games. First off is Self-Destruct. This is his 4th game, I think, from what I've gathered of his gameography. Once again, a list of all his games that I've gathered and our recommendations for them are in the description, so you can just find them. So you don't have to go do research for yourself, okay? You can slack off also. I did all the research for you. You're welcome, listener. But yeah, Self-Destruct 2008. This was made in 1 day for TIG Source's procedural generation competition. First off, making any game in 1 day is insane. He collabed with a developer called Annabelle Kennedy, who isn't really around anymore. I couldn't really find any research on her. But to make a game in 1 day for procedural generation competition specifically, which means you have to develop an algorithm for procedural generation. Insane. I recommend this game, Self-Destruct, specifically because it's kind of an obvious precursor to Super Hexagon in a weird way. It's a shoot 'em up, basically. You hit start in the game, and a female voice, kind of like Super Hexagon, goes 250 ways to survive. It's a shoot 'em up. Enemies are coming at you really fast. You have a shield, you have a gun. You have a shield that degenerates the more you get hit. You have a gun that degenerates the more you shoot it. And when you shoot the enemies, they drop shield and gun power ups, which you need to collect. And these waves are moving extremely fast. And again, each of them, these waves, they move past in like 2 seconds. There are 250 of them, which you need to survive. That's the goal of the game. So basically, it becomes this kind of marathon that goes extremely fast. We have to survive a period of time, you know, like Super Hexagon, very fast, so much that it's like visually overwhelming. But the difference is it's actually a little bit more complicated in Super Hexagon in that you have to balance your gun and your shield power ups. I'm not even kidding. You don't even have enough time to look in the bottom right corner to see how much your shield and power ups are because any second you look away, you can get hit by an enemy and killed instantly. So to help this, the game gives you alerts basically by through sound going boo, boo, boo when you have low shield or low power ups. So it becomes this kind of thing where you're like in the mode of Super Hexagon, like hyper focused on playing through to shoot 'em up, but also simultaneously you have to snap yourself out of that survival instinct you have to collect power ups between for the guns and the shield, so you can keep surviving on a long term. So it's like you're shifting gears within your mind between short term survival and long term survival. Whereas Super Hexagon, it's mainly just like I just need to get past this one wall, and eventually, if I don't have to look at a timer, if I survive enough walls, then eventually I'll beat the level without having to look at a timer. Here, you have to pay attention to your resources and things like that. So it's about both short term and long term survival, which I think is interesting. A brainier, it's Super Hexagon for the thinking man. And I didn't beat this game. It's so fucking hard. But like, yeah, this got very popular back then. Apparently, this is like a big hit on TikToks and things like that. But ever since then, it's just faded into obscurity. And I'm like, if you like Super Hexagon, you should play this game because it's like fully up your alley. It's anybody listening who likes Super Hexagon should play this. I think it's really good. Or shoot 'em ups. Yeah, one day I'll beat it. And this is not his best game, but I guess this is the last one I'll recommend. I have a lot more games that I recommend. Just like you'll see it in the highlights, but like I just think this is funny. This is like no, I'm not going to say it's his culmination, but like it's the ultimate distillation of like the fuck you he was doing back then before he got popular with Dicey Dungeons, before his pre nice era in quotes. Even though, as far as I can tell, throughout all his interviews, he was always a nice guy. He was just kind of like a little bit edgier in tone when he was making his games. American Dream might be his best narrative game. He made it as a collab with Inkerbear, which was his roommate who made Steven's Sausage Roll, and also Jasper Byrne and Tom Morgan Jones, who I think both went on to make art games, not very like popular ones, but still like they're still around. I think American Dream was a game he made, which is basically about, and I'm laughing thinking about it. You basically hit start, and you're introduced to like you're introduced to a child character who is you and your parents who are like spitting out a bunch of things about like very fast, hard to read text about like having to make money and being success and things like that. And then your kid self goes, I want to make $1 million. And that's the goal of the game. Again, I want to remind you, Terry Cavanagh is Irish. The game being called American Dream is a very specific thing. The game is all about stock market regulation. Every day you go into work and there's stocks, except they aren't even companies. They're named of celebrities. So it's Blondie, Michael Jackson. There's a Bill Cosby stock. There's like all sorts of stocks for different musicians and performers and things like that. And you buy stock in them and you just keep going home and keep going back to work. And you just keep seeing all the stocks go up, and you buy low and you sell high, and your goal is to make $1 million. And as you sell all this money for you, every time you buy, there's like a big text flashing on the screen going buy, buy, buy. And when you sell, there's going sell, sell, sell. You go home from work and you get this. The only interaction you have is this gigantic catalog of furniture which you can spend money to order on. That's your reward throughout the game. You just go through this IKEA catalog of furniture and buy, oh, I want this chair, I want this TV, I want this wardrobe. You're going so fast that you're not even really looking at what furniture you're buying. You just want to get to the next day really quickly. And every once in a while, when you get really popular and finish buying all the furniture, you go to a shareholders party where they're like giving each other all the secret tips and things like that, except they're having orgies while they're doing it, like Wolf of Wall Street style orgies. So there's like pictures of people having sex with like random women they hired and showing each other's asses and like full uncensored penises. And they're like, buy Michael Jackson stock. It cuts back to the main game, and Michael Jackson stock has went up like 10 million points. And then when you finish buying all the furniture, they're like, your furniture is out of date. You need to buy new furniture, and they give you more expensive furniture. So it's basically this gameplay loop where you're just cycling between the stock market and the furniture and orgy sex parties between shareholders. And the entire time the game's going buy, 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 sell, sell, sell. And you get like invested in it genuinely when it comes to like, it's like a kind of roguelike Balatro thing where you're like, I actually genuinely want to sell as much of this as possible. And I want to buy as much of this as possible. I want to like I really got invested in it. It goes through this vicious cycle until you finally get, spoilers, $1 million, and the game ends. And the game ends with you going, finally. The text literally goes, finally, I got $1 million, and I got it by doing what I love. The end. It's such a bitter game, especially when you take into consideration that like this is what Cavanagh was doing at the bank when he was working at his job as a risk analyst. He was like, this is basically a satire of everything he was doing back at his job. You see this with other games. There's a game called Going Forward, which is a visual novel where it's like presented like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and they throw jargon, like corporate jargon at you, which doesn't make sense, and you're given 4 options, which doesn't make sense, and only one option randomly advances you throughout the game, and all the other options are like, what the hell are you? You're fired. Get the hell out of my office. But if you keep picking all the right options, you're like, you're promoted to manager. You're promoted to executive manager. You're promoted to CEO. I love this kind of just like bitterness, this fuck you to his corporate past self that he was indulging in before, you know, like this life that he left behind. It's a very vicious attack, a very gleeful but vicious and crude kind of like edgelord attack on the idea of consumerism with this kind of like renegade indie fuck you spirit. And he's collaborating with other people, and he's doing like narrative experimentation with it, and he's incorporating like the kind of addictive or like roguelike weird number-based mechanics that he would later put in Dicey Dungeons. It has so much stuff in it, you know? And that's what I love about, I guess, auteurism. This is the good part of auteur theory, where it's like, if you play for enough of this person's games, you begin to see all these threads running alongside each other. And as a result, playing for American Dream, I was just like fully bowled over. I was like having the time of my life playing it. It's such a funny game. Yeah. Maybe other people may not get the same thrill out of it playing it just like by itself, but honestly, because this is one of the last games I played from Cavanagh before doing this podcast, this is like, yeah, a great culmination of it. That's all I gotta say.
That all sounds wonderful. And my recommendations are the 2 of the 3 games I played, V and Super Hexagon.
Yeah.
And that's all
right,
I got to say.
Let's go to recommendations now, actually. I think we're done, right? Are we done?
Was that not your recommendation? Okay.
I was just describing games. No.
Okay.
You go to recommendations, yeah.
Yeah. So my recommendations, I think that I just said my recommendation piece, so you can keep on going with
okay, V Super Hexagon.
Yeah, V Super Hexagon.
Yeah. My issue is when you make these small games, there's too many of them. His best game, Super Hexagon. I also recommend Self-Destruct, Naya's Quest, American Dream. Also Mr. Platformer, Moving Stories, Tiny Heist. I should put Tiny Heist way higher up. Tiny Heist is his best roguelike. Like if you're looking for more gameplay-based games, I say Super Hexagon, Mr. Platformer, and Tiny Heist are great. Constellation is a really interesting kind of art piece he did where you go into a website and there's just like an empty prompt with a text parser, and there's a lot of things you can type in that make stuff appear. You type in goat, it spawns in like a model of a goat. You type in hot, all of a sudden it turns like a kind of red, and it basically just becomes like a bunch of effects that you can stack onto each other, and it becomes really layered. There's a lot of stuff there. I would say if you want the most bang for your buck, go buy his commercial collection, Terry's Other Games, because it collects a lot of his favorite games with a lot of additional context, and a lot of them are very good. Yeah. American Dream. There's a board game called Quarters, which you can play with 4 people. It's kind of like Catan. I didn't even look into it, but there's like a lot of metagame stuff there, which I think is interesting. Yeah. What else? See, this is how very Terry Cavanagh's gamography is, because I'm just looking now. I realize we never mentioned Don't Look Back once in this whole discussion, and that's one of his most popular games. Don't Look Back. That was a platformer he did, which was kind of like, it was also very modular, but it was like you were shooting a bunch of animals as you were traversing to the right of the screen, and eventually it reveals itself to be a retelling of the Greek myth of Eurydice, you know, the guy who was like, "Don't look back, otherwise your wife will turn into a pillar of salt." And basically,
Oh yeah,
it
the
becomes
Hades
that.
Town guy.
Yeah, that. I remember when Hades Town, when Jane Hades Town, when she made that myth up, that was the first time anyone's ever spoke of it.
Exactly.
But that becomes a very funny game where it becomes a platformer where you literally cannot, you can only go right because every time you hit left, you literally turn back and your wife dies. So like one of your keys gets disabled like halfway through the game. I don't recommend that one though, to be honest. Self-destruct, yeah, a lot of stuff. Um, there's too much stuff here. Honestly, maybe just play through all of his games because like Christian Love, I think we said that last time. A lot of his games are just interesting, even if you don't think they're very good. Um, yeah, I didn't even mention the game which has the longest title I think I've ever seen in a video game. Ba 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 da la hagra. You'll see it when you see it. It's a very long title from 2010. He co-developed it with Ink Repair. It was developed for Tig Jam, and the theme was Finnegan's Wake. And that word is an extremely long word he took from Finnegan's Wake. And it's basically a Doom, a Doom-like first-person shooter, except halfway through the game, it transitions to an RPG where you can talk to multiple NPCs, and all the NPCs' dialogue are basically just the letters that James Joyce wrote to his wife about, I don't know if you noticed, wanting to fuck her until she farts, and like how much she likes farting in his ass. And and that's the game.
Wonderful. I wasn't expecting that at all.
So just like it transitions without any transition from the Doom shooter to just like letters from Joyce about how he wants to fuck his wife in the ass and stuff like that. It's so good. I love I love Game Jam so much.
Jeez, wonderful.
But yeah, look through his games, look through his blog, especially because he's been detailing this through 2006. You can even see the blog post where he announces that he's quitting his job to make video games. Like, I haven't seen a developer who's logged their activities so much far back then until now. He's still updating it. But yeah, if you really want detailed descriptions on how he made games, he's very transparent about it. And also, another thing I think is very funny, he has this process, I didn't even mention it, where every month he starts a new prototype, no matter what. So every month he'll start a new prototype, even if he's working on a game. I don't know if he's still doing it now, but the end result basically is that you see this vast swath of unfinished games, which he never made. Because he was constantly, it wasn't like he was making these free games because he really wanted to all the time. He was constantly planning his next commercial game. It's just that they all kept getting canceled because he didn't want to keep working on them anymore. At one point, he had a game plan with Cactus, the guy who made Hotline Miami. At one point, he was planning Don't Look Back 2, which is a sequel to a game that we didn't even discuss. If you look through his multiple articles, you'll see that some taglines mention, oh, Terry Cavanagh's next game after Super Hexagon is a game called Halting Problem. Never released that either. So he was just like constantly making and canceling games. And if you look through his blog post, you'll see a bunch of screenshots for games that you'll never get to play, which I think is awesome. I love that he clearly likes making games because he likes making games. But yeah, check out the blog. Check out his one talk he did at Amaze called Day by Day, which he breaks down literally every step he did in developing the game Tiny Heist, which is one of his best games. So he goes through how he initially made it for a game jam, how it exceeded, the game jam's time limit. So that was how a lot of his commercial games got started, although he released this one for free. And now he took steps forward of it, how he took steps back from it. Initially, he made an overworld, but as you can see in the final product, there's not an overworld. And I like that he's very transparent about his process, I think that's very nice. Yeah, I guess, this might be the longest episode we've done, maybe even longer than Christine Love. I didn't realize this is one of those things where it's like Cavanagh's games where I'm like, I go into his work thinking it's going to be simple, but then I'm like, oh, no, there's so much more to it than I thought. So yeah, Cavanagh, very interesting guy. Anything else you want to say?
I'm pretty much exhausted everything I had to say after the first hour, to be honest.
Yeah, sorry. I did tell you I was going to just talk for a long time.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. I love that you did all that. It was really interesting, and I'm glad that you shared it all.
As always, you can see all the research and recommendations we have for Cavanagh in the episode description. And if you want to ask or tell us about anything, doesn't even have to be related to whatever episode we're doing, you can email us at secretbosspodcast@gmail.com. And now it's time for next week's section. So I recommended Cavanagh. I'm not sure if you could tell, But I was the one who was more interested in Kavanaugh than Offer. But now it's Offer's turn to project his hyperfixation onto me. What's your game developer, Offer?
Yeah. Okay. So I've been really interested in doing this one for a while. And again, you don't have to play them all. I'm going to be really interested in doing this because it's a person that I think really interrogates the idea of an auteur in a video game, especially as a director, because we've mostly been focused on directors because this is a big name person. I really want to talk about a big name person, but he only really started directing games for about like 10 years. And after that, he's just been in consulting roles and producing and still very much involved in the video game process, but not really directly involved as a director like you might typically think. And I know that you know who this person is. So if you are able to guess, just give me a guess and I want to see. He's very much involved. He's very well known. He's known for a lot of really straightforward and simple games, but still very influential and very important to a lot of people. Even though it's really difficult to like pin down just what exactly makes one of his games special and auteurist. And yeah, I think that's all the hints I'm able to give without giving it away. Yeah, I'm talking about Shigeru Miyamoto. Shigeru Miyamoto, I'm sure everyone knows he's the Mario guy. Uh, he
Is
started
he? He
directing.
did that one?
Yeah, yeah, he did that Mario thing. Yeah, but yeah, I
Oh,
was surprised to
man.
notice that like he was only really directing games between Donkey Kong and Mario 64 and Super Mario Run later. It's like, wow, he only directed like maybe 10 games. That's really that feels crazy to me. Like I couldn't believe that. And he's just been a producer basically ever since. And I really want to focus on the games that he directed specifically because it feels like a lot of the narrative about Shigeru Miyamoto is about him as an auteur, and basically the idea of Miyamoto is focused on the history of Nintendo. And there isn't really like a separation between the two. It's just like, oh hey, Miyamoto did this Nintendo thing. Like even for games that he didn't have a massive involvement in, like Paper Mario Sticker Star. That's a game that's been pretty much dominated by the idea of Miyamoto coming in and playing that game and just ruining it for everyone. Not really like any of the people that actually made the game Super Mario Sticker Star, and just like thinking about Miyamoto in relation to basically every single Nintendo game, which feels strange to me. And spoilers for the next episode, it's kind of made me feel stronger in the idea that the director is an interesting figure to choose as the auteur, because I really don't see a lot of him in the games that he's produced, and I really want to elaborate more on that in the next episode.
Yeah, this is a really good topic. I also saw this when I was doing research because we were also like we were collaborating on the big gigantic enormous fuck you list of authors that we could possibly do. And I was
We have
looking
like
at
over 500 now.
yeah, we'll get through all of them. Just give us a
All
little
of
bit
them.
of time. Yeah, all of them. But like, yeah, I was looking for Miyamoto's gamography, and I'm like, it's really interesting because like he didn't work on like Mario Galaxy 2, but he did work on Baseball for the NES. He was the director of that one. I want to say, I mean, obviously you can't do a one by one comparison, but I always, whenever I think of Miyamoto nowadays, I think of Walt Disney because he was like when you look back at Disney's, when you look back on the company Disney, you see that a lot of the classics that were being directed, Cinderella, Fantasia, things like that, they weren't directed by Walt Disney, but it was just that Walt Disney created the Mickey Mouse cartoons and directed the early ones, and he was kind of the overseeing guy after that, that shaped the direction of the company. And for some people for some reason, people now worship this guy who was basically an executive, which is strange. And I think Miyamoto is the same thing in that he's more of a symbol for the kind of attitude that the company is, rather than what the company actually does. Yeah, Miyamoto is like it's like the childish spirit. Everyone hears the same stories about like how he went exploring in the caves and how that inspired Zelda. I think that's like the one story everybody knows about when it comes to like auteur influence with video games. So yeah, I'm like really interested in diving into this, and seeing. Get ready. You're gonna see me try and draw a connection from baseball to Super Mario 64. It's gonna happen.
I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking about Miyamoto because I think it's such a unique figure to draw from, and really the only one of his kind. But it's also going to help us inform when we're talking about all the other auteurs that we're interested in. So yeah, looking forward to that.
And also, we will be able to settle once and for all who the real auteur is. Yeah, because honestly, right now, I've been taking stuff like director and game designer roles as auteurs. I haven't been really looking at like producer or stuff like that. But who knows? Maybe. Maybe the producer is the auteur in every medium, and we just haven't been realizing it.
Okay. Yeah.
As
Do we need to do anything else to end the episode?
as always, I'm Galvin.
But yeah, and I'm author function. I'm author function. That's what I said. There we go. Let's end the episode. Bye.
Thanks for
Thank you for
listening.
listening. That's what you say. There we go.
Good job.
Okay.
Good job.
You gonna have to record it now?